Hello, welcome to another episode of Showboys. My name is Mike, and I'm excited to be here tonight. We have a very fun show on the docket. We're in the Elite 8 round of the March Madness tournament, so looking forward to getting into that. But before we do, I'm joined by our lovely co-host and panel for the tournament. Of course, we have Pixel Nick. How are you tonight, sir?
Doing good. Was that the bass boosted version of the opening song?
It
I don't
sounded
know.
like
It
it.
felt extra
Wow,
heavy.
it felt-
It
Was
did
it
feel a
hitting-
little heavy. I thought
It
the
hit
same
hard
thing.
today.
It
Yeah.
definitely
Yeah,
hit
it's hitting
hard.
hard today.
Nice, I like it. I did nothing to it, but I always like more bass, so I see
Da
nothing
bass.
wrong with that. Chad Walk the Third is here.
I'm here.
How are you tonight, sir?
I'm pretty good. Just got off my no spray meeting that we went to right before the show started. It's good. We got a couple people joining up, so it's good.
That's awesome.
It's always good. It's always good, man. Dad, how are you tonight?
I'm good.
Yeah, back on screen again.
Yes, sir.
Big month for you.
I feel like
I know.
It is.
You
just
what's gonna
rushed into the
happen-
spotlight.
Yeah, what if he gets used to this? Like we're gonna. I mean, I feel like in a couple weeks we're gonna have to humble him and put him back behind the screen.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Put me back in my place, back in my corner.
That's
my
why when
little
I
space.
that's why when I popped in here, I threw him down below. Told him.
Yeah.
And then when Chad gets
definitely
here,
did.
throw him in his corner. Get in your corner.
For our video watchers, you may notice that Chad and Nick are both wearing yellow shirts tonight, which is very awesome. I don't know why I pointed that out, but I just felt like you should know.
And like now with how bright his hoodie is, his headband actually looks the same like tone as my shirt now.
Yeah, yeah,
That's a white headband.
The white headband is absorbing the yellow glow from his hoodie and
Yeah.
making it look like Nick's shirt.
Yeah.
I love it. Before we get into it, of course, we got to shout out our top tier patrons, Joe C, Yusuf H, and Tim B. Thank you guys for your continued support. All of our other patrons, you guys rule. We appreciate your support. It helps us be able to continue to make content. So thank you. If you're interested in supporting us or wondering what Patreon is, you can head over to patreon.com/showboyspodcast. Check it out. It's a nice way where you can basically subscribe to us monthly. There's different tiers at different price points, each with their own different and unique perks and benefits, including things like exclusive monthly episodes that go up there and other fun stuff. So go check it out.
And signed headbands from Chad.
Yes, signed headbands coming
Yes.
soon. His headband matches the color of the frame of the picture of the wall on his wall.
Also true. Also true.
Also absorbing the yellow.
That might
glow
be
from his
that might be
face.
like all-time top Showboys comment.
That probably is the funniest comment we've ever gotten.
Yeah.
Dude, he's
Thank you,
legendary.
Joe.
Why does he have a picture of his wall? on his
He loves that wall.
Oh, geez. All right. So we've made it through 2 episodes, 3 rounds of the bracket here, of course. On the second, we kicked off the tournament. We went through round 1, 32 matchups of streaming service original series. Last week, we powered through round 2 in the Sweet 16. We have 8 teams left, 4 matchups to get through tonight. And we're going to be going into much more depth in each matchup because we have the time now. We're not trying to talk about, 16 plus, 24 shows, like a lot of shows. There were a lot of shows. So, yeah, we're going to be getting into a little more detail. For me, today, as I was, compiling my show notes, I just went through each matchup in each category, typed out a few things, and tried to pick my winner. 2 of the matchups somehow ended up in a tie for me, even though there's 5 categories. I'm excited to get
Only
into it
you,
with all of you guys.
Did you give it like a 0.5 or something? How'd that?
No, so
Yeah.
like I went
Buddy.
through and I picked my winner for each category and added some notes for both shows. And in those 2 matchups in particular, there was one category that I couldn't decide a winner. I thought they did that category equally well.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting. I literally have no
You
idea
have-
how tonight's
you have-
gonna
pick that category. You can't just leave it open ended.
Well,
You just bail.
we have 3 other people on the panel here that will hopefully, you know,
Yeah, I
not.
know how this goes. I get stuck.
He gets
with
stuck.
You'll be the
breaking the tie.
tiebreaker.
And then everyone hates Nick. Like,
Yes.
that's just where this
Yes.
goes. So
I'm still
okay.
raw about Peacemaker, by the way. Just so we're on the same page.
Yeah.
We know.
We'll make it through. So let's go over the rules first, and then we'll break into the criteria, and then we'll just get right into matchup number 1. So the rules for this round: each matchup is deliberated by the entire panel of hosts, which would be the 4 of us. Each
except
series,
Mike, he doesn't decide.
I decide. Just there's a couple categories that were I just thought
I'm
they
done.
both should win because it was just equally good. Each series will be judged using the set criteria that we will be going over in just a minute here. 3 of the 4 panel members must be in agreement for the match to be decided. The audience poll, and if we need to, the average overall rating will act as panel tiebreakers. Personal bias will be removed as much as possible, with each matchup being analyzed objectively. And of course, the most important rule of the entire tournament: subscribe to Showboys Podcast and also Showboys Gaming on YouTube to help us reach our 1,000 subscriber goal so we can give away the Nintendo OLED Switch that Nick has sitting in his office somewhere. The criteria we will be using tonight consists of 5 categories and a 6th bonus. We have our story category, which will be going through the overall quality of the story being told, factoring in how interesting, fluid, and well executed the narrative is and how it plays out throughout the series. We have our character category, overall quality of the characters used in the series, taking into account how the characters are written, acted, and used throughout the series. We have our aesthetic category, the overall quality of the visual presentation of the series, including the cinematography, presentation of visual effects, etc. We have our world building category, the overall quality of the world or cinematic universe within the series, factoring in how fluid and seamless the world of the series blends into the narrative and potential to see other stories told within said world. Lastly, we have our cultural impact category. This is the impact made with the audience, including memorability, and the impact on viewers and the impact on the industry as a whole. And of course, we have our 6th bonus category, and that is the music, quality of the music, both original score and the use of existing songs, as well as the effectiveness when used, for example, building tension or, helping exert other emotions in scenes and whatnot. So there's the rules. Nick, how many poll votes did we get?
We got 19 this week.
19.
Nice.
I was
nice.
worried because we're gonna land on an even number because I was so happy with the odd number last time. And now there only being 4 matches for whatever reason. So each poll has gotten closer and closer with more and more matches. So like we're almost like 50-50 on like 3 out of 4 of these matches, which was worrisome. Because the poll is supposed to be the tiebreaker, and I don't know how that would have worked. We had to make up a rule, and Joe would have been really mad. We just had to make up a rule.
Yeah. Well, we have the overall rating contingency, but gladly we have an odd number of poll results, so we won't have to really break into that. But hey, the poll seems to reflect my general thoughts of each of these matchups. Could seriously, in my opinion, go either way. We have a lot of strong shows, and I don't know. We're gonna have to send 4 of them home, which is sad. But hopefully, the 4 best will move on to the next round. We have the chat is blowing up. Holy cow! Joe, aren't you glad it's Thursday?
It's actually Thursday today
or Friday. Yes. Yeah, we're glad you're here. Civ, we're glad you're here too, man.
I was glad Joe was here yesterday for us.
I know, right?
That's dedication.
So excited. He showed up a day early.
Dedication for sure.
Do you guys have anything you want to get into before we get into the first matchup? Any like house cleaning stuff? Any like super important news or anything at all before we just dive right into the matchups tonight?
I probably should have cleaned my basement.
Okay, hindsight's 2020.
House cleaning, man.
Speaking of house cleaning, I kind of slacked on that. Sorry. I need to bring back the black curtain.
I mean, hey, it's fine. It just, it looks natural. It looks lived in, which is a good look, Yeah.
I can always just blame my kids. It's cool.
Hey, there you go. One of the perks of having kids, I guess.
Right.
So let's get right in. Matchup number 1. We have so all these are the division finals, right? The winners of these matches will move on to the semifinals, the final 4 round, which is going to be a fun round. We'll talk about the rules of the semifinals at the end of the show. But we have the Chosen, our number 1 seed in Division Mike, going up against our number 2 seed, Arcane, also on Netflix. And I think this is the only matchup left in the bracket where the number 1 and number 2 seeds met in the division finals. But
yeah,
we kind of already have talked about the general synopsis of both shows throughout the various rounds. So let's just go right into the different categories here.
I will say on the whole seed thing, all the matches except Chad's have number 1 seeds in them.
Yep.
Really?
Yeah, that's because my number 1 seed was Fleabag, which got eliminated in the first round.
We do have to subnote that Chad had all the top tier rated shows. Yeah. So his 7 and 9 seed are actually
seed in there, Nick?
Yeah, Mando and
yeah, Chernobyl is my number 1 seed.
Oh yeah, Chernobyl. Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
Huh.
Because remember you and I were tied for overall average, and then I got Chernobyl and I got bumped up 0.2.
I always forget about Chernobyl because it was a late edition.
Yeah,
I always forgot that it snuck in at the very last minute and snagged that number 1 seed.
I needed it.
Yeah, so let's get right into the matchup here. We'll go with the first category, which is story. I'll start it off, and then we can just go around and have everyone touch on the story for both shows. The Chosen, we have a lot of historical, cultural context, which I've talked about before. One thing that I think is interesting about the show that not many shows that focus on Jesus do is tell the story of his life leading up to the crucifixion, when most of Jesus media is telling the story of the crucifixion, like you got the Passion of the Christ, etc. What I like about the story is it's that different viewpoint, but 2, it makes the story of Jesus a little more relatable, and the story is told not from the vantage point of Jesus, but instead from the vantage point of the 12 disciples, which again is never generally the focus. So I think that's good. I gave it all my ratings were out of 5. I gave it a 4-ish. I would say the negative aspect of the story is the source material is extremely volatile to have creative liberties with. So there's a lot of contention for certain things, the way they portrayed certain characters, some dialogue that was said in a few episodes. Of course, there's going to be controversy, but I'd give it about a 4 out of 5. For Arcane, again, Nick and I, we were actually talking about this today. The similarities between these 2 series, very interesting. Again, this is based off of source material that isn't incredibly detailed. The lore for League of Legends is, I was showing Dad the other night. It literally is maybe 7 paragraphs for each character. So you're not there. It's not like they have books and books and books that are hyper detailed on these stories, or this particular story that's told in Arcane. So the amount of wiggle room for Arcane, whereas like The Chosen doesn't have much, Arcane has a ton. It allows for immense creative liberty to take place. And I think that freedom is something that really sets Arcane apart from any other video game adaptation, because mainly the complaint on game adaptation stories is like, why didn't you just tell the story of the game? Because most of the time the game stories are pretty awesome, which is why we fall in love with these games. The interesting thing is Arcane doesn't have a story because it's a competitive multiplayer game. So the fact that they were able to take these multiplayer characters with like paragraphs of story and flesh them out into these living and breathing characters and develop such a gripping story set in these regions that you don't even explore in the game because you're playing basically like internet chess. I think it's just crazy what they did with the story here. And it's cool to see stories fleshed out of characters that you've played in this game. Like Vi, who is one of the main characters in the story, was a character I played a ton of when I was playing League of Legends. So it was really cool to get a story for a character I played for a really long time. I gave Arcane a 5 out of 5, with Arcane taking the story category for me. So let's move on to Nick. How do you see the story category playing out here?
Yeah, and the whole time, particularly this matchup, the issue I've had with this matchup is I had a hard time making a point for one in my mind and being like, well, you could technically make the same point for the other one. Dang it. And it really has come down to like, I think whoever has like the stronger case in each category, obviously, but like it's tough because usually you do that by saying this one has better points, more points, where it's like every point I make, someone could just be like, yeah, well, the other one does the exact same thing. It's just so bizarre because these are two very different things, whether it's animation or being a video game adaptation versus like the Holy Bible and like Jesus, like just two polar opposite ends of the spectrum here. But they're so similar when you kind of match them up like that. So I have seen season 1 of The Chosen, and I've seen season 1 of Arcane. So caught up there. For the story, I definitely echo what you had to say on a few points there. Obviously, one of the big differences is Arcane has a lot of creative liberties to take with its story, whereas like The Chosen doesn't have much at all, especially because they set out to tell the story as they believe it to be the most true. And obviously that's the contentious part, because a lot of people are going to be like either not true, not how it went down, or they have a lot of different beliefs around it. So I think while the story is like known, pretty straightforward, I do like you said it is about not from his point of view, Jesus, and it's about the like better part of his life, not the like, because I was gonna ask like, what is like the average like other Jesus media about, and then you're like crucifixion, because I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, about like his death. I'm like, that's right, that's what Hollywood likes, is everyone likes seeing Jesus die, I guess. But this is on like the other end of the spectrum. Is like, let's show like the episode that's just like Jesus loves the little children. It's like just him hanging out with some children, doing some carpentry stuff, building some stuff. And I'm like, that's such a nice episode. Like nothing malicious there at all.
No, not at all.
Nope. So yeah, overall, I'll agree with you, Mike. I'll give the story to Arcane on this one, mostly because of its creative freedom and the fact that if the Chosen starts in terms of the story, like it's pretty nailed down, especially with how they're approaching the story. They're not gonna, no pun intended.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, poor choice of words.
Yeah, it definitely is. Poor guy.
I hate to see it.
But the Arcane, like they can do anything with the story, and it's not that they just like did anything with it and it was just it was fantastic. That's the hard thing to get away from Arcane, is because, like you said, they started with nothing, and like they've all of a sudden like came out of the gate swinging. Like they only needed 3 or 4 episodes. Was there like 3, 4 episodes?
Yeah, I think it was like released in 3 parts of 3 episodes each for I think a total of 9 episodes.
Yeah, so even the release cadence, like they just took so many awesome creative liberties on how they rolled that first season out, and they're like, hey, here's 3 episodes, full stop, start over. 3 new episodes, new story, full stop, let's do it again. And they did it like 3 times within a season. It's just fantastic.
All right, Dad.
So I watched these, like the first episode.
Where's the dad caveat? I watched these.
I watched the
first episode. He said it.
For the first episode. Or some of the first episode.
Wait, both?
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean,
this will be
just gonna regurgitate what's already been said. I think it was very cool that they both could create something with not a lot of source material. I think they executed it well on both sides. And like you said, Nick, there's like, you bring up something from one and then the other one does pretty much the same, you know, with the source material and whatnot. I think I'm going to give it to Arcane as well because it's cool. And I dig it.
It's rad.
It's
all
rad.
Right.
I got
Chad
much
Walk.
to say.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I don't really have too much more to say. I watched 5 and 5 of this, 5 episodes apiece.
It's a heavy swing.
I think what stood out between these two, at least for me, story-wise, is really what you guys already touched on, that there just isn't any lore in the game, and they built this awesome freaking show over it.
So good.
I mean, it was like multiple times through multiple episodes. I was like, dude, where, like, they're getting all this crazy cool stuff. Like, where is this coming from? Like, I couldn't imagine being a writer and building something off of a game that doesn't really have that much lore, you know? I mean, that's
well, the interesting thing is, like, it's hard to say because yes, the game itself doesn't have any lore in it as you're playing it. But if you go to their website, like,
there's
they
a ton
have
on there, yeah.
like each character has like a bio and then like a story, but the stories are only like a page long.
It's an abstract of the character.
Yeah. And I'll probably touch on it in other categories, but yeah. Both shows have very little detail to actually work with.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, for me, yeah, it's Arcane. So.
All right. So on the characters, this one I have a little bit closer, and for a minute I was thinking about maybe this could be a tie, but for The Chosen, it's a great look and interpretation of the disciples and the human aspect of Jesus, and like I said, from the story, it kind of humanizes Jesus and makes it a little more relatable and able to understand. But again, with the real focus being on the characters of the disciples, which, I mean, obviously Jesus is written about the most in the source material. You get you learn a little bit about the disciples as you're reading the Bible, but they are definitely not the focus. So how they were able to build these characters and make them interesting, I thought was really cool. But much like the story, the source material is very volatile and can be a hotbed of controversy with the way characters are portrayed. They took a few creative liberties with Matthew and Little James, as he's called in the show, that of course made people get angry in comments on the internet. So,
is there anyone that's just like Mary Magdalene was a whore, or just like she was not? You know what I mean? It's
well,
like,
I mean,
is there still people that are like pitchforking against? Okay, she was. She doesn't seem that way in the show. She was previously.
She was previously, yeah. But But yeah, that's a whole other conversation we get into. But as for Arcane, again, much like The Chosen, not a ton of details. The details on the characters from League of Legends are probably more detailed than the characters from the Bible, as the Bible is kind of like a recounting of events, whereas these character bios on the League website are providing details on the characters. The adaptation from game to screen was excellent. I think from what lore there is, like that exists on Riot's website for League of Legends, they were able to capture the essence of these characters from those lore pieces in the show very, very well, even to the point of capturing the I don't know the correct word, but like the power fantasy of like that you feel when you play as the character. I felt those same feelings as I was watching the character, if that makes any sense.
They captured the game mechanics of the character.
Yeah, well. Yeah. It was
the
so
character
cool.
of that thing you're playing as on the screen.
Like, and they use like Chad and Dad, do you guys plan on finishing Arcane? Because I don't want to like okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So without going into spoilery areas, there were some moves and fights that Vi used that are just her moves from the game.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
And I was like, oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, because I can't remember what episode it was, but they threw the like things that like built the rocks on the people. That they were like, or crystals or something. I was that's got to be straight out of the game. I'd imagine like a movement inhibitor for players or something.
That one doesn't ring a bell, but when she gets the glove and she's like uppercutting dudes, like her ultimate move, she just flies at somebody and uppercuts them really high up in the air. And I was like, oh, that's so sweet.
Yeah, they took it's the Rock and Doom, right, where they went like game mode, right? But like the way they do the game mode in this show is just so much better and like tasteful than like most other game movie shows when they do it, because it just looks so good.
Another thing I like is they added new characters, obviously, to tell these stories. Some of which we could possibly see enter the game as playable characters, because that's the cool flexibility that this has here, with League being a live service game, constantly being updated. And always looking for ways to build its roster. I think there's 130 playable characters in the game, which is just absurd, but they're always adding more, and there's a nice chunk of new characters in the Arcane story that maybe we'll see them come in. But let's go in reverse order now. So Chad, what do you think character section?
So I mean, I don't want to repeat everything that you just said.
Mike's saying so much.
I'm sorry. I'll let one of you guys go first next time.
So I don't know much about either of the characters in either of these shows, right? So for me, I think that just for my personal nerdiness, I like the characters far more in Arcane. They're just badass. You know what I mean? I kind of should have touched on it in The Chosen. I don't want to touch on it too much, but it's just very slow, I think, for my personal taste. Like, it's just a slow show.
For sure.
And that might be the point of it, and that's fine. But yeah, for me, it's characters on Arcane side.
Dad.
Okay, so as far as characters, for Chosen, it's cool to see mannerisms and personalities of people I've read about come to life on screen. I think that's kind of cool. For Arcane, the fact that they were able to translate a playable character into a 3-dimensional person on screen or cartoon, but they're believable. I don't know.
They have weight to them.
Yeah, they're not just a character that you played. They're an actual person that they put time into and created.
while you're thinking, do you think that out of the game adaptations we've gotten, show or movies, Arcane has executed story and characters potentially the best? Or do you have, off the top of your head, without completely derailing the episode, do any game adaptations come to mind that have done these two categories better?
Yes, one, and it unfortunately just narrowly missed our bracket here. The Last of Us just absolutely.
That's what I was saying.
Absolutely,
not counting the Last of Us.
Yeah. Of course, that one's that's a great adaptation for sure.
Just finished the finale of that show. They did a phenomenal job. But outside of that, I don't. The problem is the context. I don't know that I have context for the League of Legends stuff, so I don't know that I can really comment on it. But not a lot of shows do it very good. I think the Uncharted movie did a little bit of Nathan Drake justice, very little. I think the Resident Evil movies are horrendous. Obviously, like the characters that come from the
forget about the
games.
Show, even though we all wish we could.
Yeah, I tried to watch that show, man, and whew,
I couldn't even get past like 5 minutes of it.
Dude, I did 15, so I got a little further. But
I like seatbelted myself down to the couch and forced myself to watch the entire season.
But I will say that not knowing a lot about League of Legends, I think that it makes the characters cooler than most video game stuff. Like I'm more intrigued by the characters in Arcane than anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
It makes me want to play the game.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Don't play it. It's literally the most toxic community in the entire world. You will leave every game just so depressed. So, Dad, characters. Who gets your vote?
Arcane.
I was like, he doesn't want to do it, but he's gonna do it.
Nick.
Yeah, when it comes to characters, I think one way to kind of sum up what I think we've all said or are trying to say is like the gravitas of the characters, and like that's that feeling of like you were saying, Mike, in terms of the moves, right? Capturing that all the way to, to me, to answer your question, Mike, about like other ones, like it's before Arcane, it was like Warcraft movie, like that movie had good weight to it in terms of the game, right? But then Arcane comes along and puts excellent weight to the characters, and I think Riot was so smart all these years by not putting themselves in a hole, by like actually writing specific stories and just giving those abstracts of the characters. So you're like, hey, here are the kind of like the George Lucas thing, like here's the box that they fit in, like just keep them in that box and you'll be all right.
Right. Yeah.
And that's kind of what Riot did. They were like, hey, here's the very open-ended box that they exist in. As long as you stay in within these lanes, you got goodness. Now, for The Chosen, it definitely has the Warcraft effect, as I said earlier to you, Mike. In that,
I love your explanation of the Warcraft effect.
Yeah. What was my explanation of the Warcraft effect?
let me look.
Oh yeah, it lends itself a lot to people who have that know the source material. So the Warcraft movie is really good if you play World of Warcraft or any of those games. It makes a lot more sense. So for The Chosen, like while I'm probably more familiar with that source material than Chad, I am more familiar with like the history and like what's going on geographically, where they're at. They don't expand upon that. I'll get to that section later. But in terms of the characters, like I'm vaguely aware of them, but I could tell I would be much more engaged with the show if I knew more of the source material. So a lot of scenes or lines of dialogue that you or Dad are probably like, oh, that was awesome, or like that was really cool to see, like acted out and done. And like Dad, you said in terms of putting movement and like life to characters you've read about, I can definitely tell knowing that would make the show way better. Because those are the parts where I'm like, I can tell they're doing something here. I don't know what it is.
I don't get it.
It's the the Rebels effect for me.
Yeah,
the Ahsoka Vader scene.
Yeah.
Like, I bet that was really cool.
Cool. They're doing something here. Something's happening.
Yeah, that was probably really cool if I knew more about Star Wars.
I bet this is really awesome if I knew what was happening. And that was the entire Warcraft movie. Like that just fell flat in terms of general audience because they're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But for
like
we're just
us, we're like, this is amazing.
It's fantastic. Now, but in that same regard, Arcane, it doesn't have that problem. Like they're just flat out like good characters because there is no characters to know what the source material is, and they're just generally intriguing because, you know, they also follow these kind of like archetypes that we all know of, and they're fun to kind of follow along with. And you know, you kind of get that like got a Joker-ish vibe in there for one. You've got these kind of more hero archetypes, which are super fun. But yeah, I'll give it to Arcane too in terms of characters as well.
Well, I'm gonna let you continue to talk so I don't steal everyone's points again, and kick off the aesthetic category. If you could give your thoughts on the aesthetics.
Yeah, the aesthetics. Man, Arcane's aesthetic is just bananas. If it wasn't for the fact that like I'm not like the biggest anime nerd, and I haven't seen all like the notable animes, but I've seen a good share of them, and I try to hit on the ones that are important, right, for my nerddom. And Arcane has like definitely like a top 3-5 aesthetic for an animated show. Just like it's just like I would call it the drip. Like whatever it's just it's wet. It's like it's good. It's got depth. It's like a good oil painting by Bob Ross. Like it's just vibrant. And you know, and that's hard with like trying to keep these categories in lanes because it's like the characters have like fantastic aesthetics, right? Just the way they look, the way they move, the animations, all that jazz. So it's really hard to beat Arcane on that subject, especially when you would think too, like animation, it's really hard to just be like fall in line and just kind of be with the rest and like play it safe and not do anything like out of the box. Like Attack on Titan, like it has a really specific aesthetic that, you know, that kind of like blows it away a lot of things. Arcane somehow comes in not being part of any sort of like it doesn't have a comic book, it doesn't have a manga or I never say that right.
Manga.
We
all three said it different. It's manga.
I got that hard A.
Manga.
It's disappointing because you have one sitting right next to you too.
I know.
Have you read it yet? Just staring at
halfway through.
Okay.
You can't see the bookmark, but
no.
Haven't read it in a while though. I'm slacking.
Yeah. And then so like the aesthetic for The Chosen, it has, you know, a standard historical drama docu-series, kind of like it has a very good show film over it for like what shows like that it could fall into. It could be a much more boring version of itself where it's more of a historical like docu-series. Like luckily it does not fall into that bucket. Like they do a good job making it feel like a TV show, and it, you know, takes it out of that realm where otherwise if it wasn't for that director's eye for like what looks good, that show would be very differently seen aesthetically. But like I do like how much he brings just like general like cinematography to it and the right shots and like the way the environments are set up. Like that's all important to make it not a History Channel like documentary, right? That's dramaed out. And we talk about this all the time in terms of, you know, we want like a good Japan version of one of those things where it's like well acted. It looks good. It's not just some people talking about it in the chair. And then you have some like B-level action and like some dialogue.
Yeah. It's coming, and it's probably coming this year from the sounds of it. So they're done filming. It's been years since they stopped filming, so I think it will probably be out this year. Shogun on FX. So
cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I mean, for its other things in its lane, Chosen does so well, but unfortunately it goes up against like the drippiest thing on TV in the past like 5 years.
The drippiest thing.
Yep.
Can't unhear that. Dad.
Okay, so I can appreciate a good period piece and the way it looks and feels, tastes and smells and all that good stuff.
Jesus.
It matches the time period, and that I can appreciate that, how they dress, how they look, how the world looks. It's got very, it's plain colors, but it's up against Arcane where all the colors pop. It's like vibrant colors, like
even the dark parts of the show.
everything about it pops. It's
contrasty.
Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, I'm gonna also give it to Arcane.
Chadwick.
Yeah, so I mean, I went into Arcane being a pretty big weeb. Like, I've watched a lot of animes, so I was not expecting to be really blown away by the animation because there's a lot of anime that do it really, really well. And it blew me away. It's just that like neon soaked color palette that it's got going on that I think is its strong suit.
Oh yeah.
But I do want to talk about The Chosen a little bit. I kind of somewhat disagree with Nick's opinion on that it doesn't seem like a History Channel thing. I think it seems a little low budget, which I'm sure it was, right? Yeah. At least in that first season there. The Roman armor looks weird to me. Maybe that's how it is. It's just very shiny and weird looking. So like little things like that were kind of taking me out of it a little bit.
Things like that, while I was watching, I was like, is that just like super accurate? And I'm used to like the like Hollywood versions of it, or is it just like low budget and it's not accurate? That's what I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I would like someone to tell me.
I think I have pretty much a problem with any kind of like armor being like super chromy and decked out. You know what I mean? Even though it was the Romans, it's going to get dirt on it eventually, so it's going to get worn out and stuff. But that, I mean, it's such a small complaint. It just does feel low budget. But Arcane is a clear winner here.
This is, I mean, all the points already made. Lowest category for me for Chosen. Nothing truly special about the visual aesthetics. There are a couple of cool cinematography things they do in seasons 2 and 3. One episode in season 2, we have a nice 10 to 15 minute open of an episode that's a oneer, which is really cool. Again, you don't see like cinematography type things like that in Christian media very often. It's done very well, adds a lot of meaning to that opening of that scene. And then in season 3, we have a cool, again, opening, great use of like black and white. Everything's in black and white. There's like no audio from the clips of the scenes that you're seeing. You're just hearing like voiceover with some cool music. But outside of that, Chosen doesn't really do much of anything special. And again, Arcane is just over the top. Amazing color use, very cool art style. And I think something that you guys may not pick up on as not people who played League of Legends or have dove into the lore of League of Legends, but I think it really, much like it captures the essence of the characters, it really captures the essence of the region and the cities like Zaun and Piltover. Super great, like totally nails what we're given in text on the website. So it's really cool to see that, given visuals and then like, get to hang out in those places for 9 episodes worth of the show. So I too give this to Arcane. So we can touch on world building and cultural impact if you guys want in depth. But as of now, we have, if we're going majority in categories, Arcane has picked up the victory already.
Smoking it.
Do you guys? I mean, I think it would be cool to touch on some of the things in the other categories, but in to save time, I'll leave that decision up to you guys. Do you want to move on to match 2, or do we want to talk about other categories?
Match 2.
I think that's a great idea because we do have to talk about Arcane next week. So maybe we don't want to talk about everything.
Save it a little bit.
So we have our first winner of the night, and that is Arcane.
Woo!
Moving on to the final 4 out of Division Mike. So there we go. Let's move on to Division Nick. The finals. Whew. I got to add before we go in, I watched all of Chernobyl. I'm not going to pull a dad here. I did watch all of Chernobyl. So as of yesterday, I have seen every season of every show here in the Elite 8. So I'm feeling good. I'm really excited to talk about this matchup. It was a tough one for me personally, but Nick, I will allow you the honors of kicking us off here.
Yeah, sure thing. This is my number 1 seed, Chernobyl, versus my number 10 seed, The Expanse. And yeah, it's just now, unlike the last match where, they had a lot of similarities, at least, in their categories in terms of points. These ones might be a little bit more diversified between them. They have a few less similarities. I think I'm going to start with world building for this one. And Chernobyl, I'd say it definitely lacks in the world building aspect, though it does a good job in terms of at least framing the important aspects of what's important for the show. Tough for the show because it's super hyper focused on like one event in like, what is it, like 2 weeks? It's not even that much time.
Yeah.
But really most in the event of like world building, they're kind of just contextually placing like the characters, where they come from, the different scientists, and like the different reports about the world as this thing was happening. So that was cool to see. And like, it just kind of scratches the world building as needed. Now, whereas The Expanse has a lot of solar system building.
Yes, worlds building.
Yeah. Yeah, complete.
That was a really weird laugh. I apologize for that.
Yeah, don't do that. Yeah, I mean, The Expanse, especially from where it starts off to where that show ends up, like it just has this really great exponential growth throughout the series, where the first season's, it's a detective mystery. It's really narrowed in on like a core set of characters. They slowly introduce characters as the detective is like making his way through the solar system to crack the case. And then, they keep a lot of things under wraps, where it's kind of like, it's basically, a sci-fi detective mystery for like 5 episodes. Then episode 6 just like peels your skull cap off. And from there, it like really kind of like mid-season finale breaks its own box it was trying to put itself in for the first 5 episodes, and it's like, no, that's not what we're doing here. Like, we have a lot to get into. So easily enough, I would give it to The Expanse for world building on this one.
Dad,
fun fact, they do have something in common. They both have Jared Harris in it.
Yes, of course. The Battle of Jared Harris.
And he was almost in every show that.
Yeah, it seemed like it. Yeah.
He's a legend.
Do you have anything to add there to world building there, Dad?
No.
No.
I give it to Expanse.
You give it to Expanse. Chad?
Yes, sir.
Anything new to add?
Yeah, I also give it to Expanse. Yeah, it's just a cool world that they've built out, especially with like the Mars colony and the Earth colony and the Belters. Just everything that they got going on in the world feels really cool. I also like that they're relatively accurate on the science of space in most scenes as well. So I think they do a lot of world building throughout the first couple of seasons, really through the first season where they're kind of laying the groundwork. So yeah, for me, it's it's easy. The Expanse. I love Chernobyl. I'm sure we'll talk about that more, but Expanse blows it out of the water. I mean, there's just no competition as far as world building goes.
Yeah, I had the same for this category. Just the mass of what we're like, where we go in the Expanse compared to Chernobyl, obviously. Only new thing to add for the Expanse, at least, is they went as far as giving the Belters their own dialect, which super cool.
Super.
I love how distinct they make the three factions, like the Earthers and the Martians and the Belters, of course. But for Chernobyl, while of course I totally agree with Nick, it's so hyper focused on Chernobyl itself, that town, that plant, and then when it does go back, 10,000 view of the show, you're still largely contained in Russia, and I think you will really only get outside of Russia for like
the end,
a few lines of dialogue in like one episode for a couple minutes, where you see a news report from the U.S. and then Germany lends them a robot, right? But one thing that they do crush in Chernobyl is like nailing that time period and the visuals of the late 80s there, or mid 80s, which I thought was very cool, but that it pales in comparison to what the Expanse does. So gets my vote there too. What category would you like to attack next, sir?
Yeah. So let's go into aesthetic for this matchup. This one, I would say it is definitely a bit closer, because the aesthetic on Chernobyl is really good. Like you're saying about like the period piece kind of concept of capturing the time period. Even the very appropriate aesthetic of, gray filter on everything, or like that almost like ashy look on everything. Yeah. Very fitting, of course, because like it's basically a giant meltdown fire. Like it's bad. It's bad news bears up in there. So fantastic aesthetic, and the characters also, not to go into characters, but they have a great aesthetic about them too, because they look exactly out of the period that they are in, whether in the dialogue, like it just fits so cozily into the time and the event. So very good on Chernobyl for that. The aesthetic of the Expanse definitely still, it fits into that sci-fi aesthetic, of course, right? But it does have a very, very awesome like realism to it, just like Chad said, in regards to like the accuracy of the science in it. And to your point too, Chad, there's, when you said that, it made me remember that they didn't just introduce like physics into that show, where they're like, hey, here's this thing, we're just going to talk about it because it's like cool, like science truth.
Yeah.
They stick with those themes, like they are reoccurring themes, like things they have to deal with. So it's not like some shows, I feel like they just like, throw it in there for like, hey, look, we did this thing and pointing it out.
Yeah.
We're going to stick with it the whole show, and like it's going to continue to be a part of the show.
Yeah.
But that goes to aesthetic too, because they maintain that world that they're building, where it's like the physics are real. We care about these things. Like the ship's always gotta, they gotta reverse thrust. Like that gets me every time. I'm like, that's such a weird thing at first, but you're like, it totally makes sense. They have to deaccelerate and like shoot their thrusters the other way to slow their speed. Crazy physics.
Dude, the physics in the ring was ridiculous.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah,
because it's not what they expected.
Yeah.
Oh, so cool.
Yeah, the aesthetic of space Mormons. Right. Throw that out there right now.
Their ship.
Super cool.
Plowed into. Or tried to.
This category for me, this by the way was one of the matchups that I had pretty much being a tie that I would hopefully you guys could decide. But this is also one of the categories that was the tie for me. Ooh. But as we're talking through it, I think I'm going to lean more towards Chernobyl for the aesthetics here. While The Expanse, the space visuals are cool, and the physics they use and stuff, I really love what Chernobyl does with the visuals, the feel, the vibe, what they're able to capture using the dulled out colors. Even I know it's like a bonus thing, but I guess the music could also play into the aesthetic too. But Amazon's use of music to capture like the dread and like sense of something being wrong really added to the visual aesthetic of the thing. And side note on the music, like it gives me very The Last of Us vibes, which I love. It's never a bad thing. But visually for me, what took it over the top is what they did to the characters that were exposed and affected by the radiation. Like, I think it may be episode 2 or 3, but when they're in the hospital and like basically the engineers are turning into like goo sacks in the hospital beds, like that made me so sick. Like it was so gross. But they like crushed it. And like even the aging of Jared Harris's character, I always forget his name, Skarsgård. I even forget his character's name, but Jared Harris's partner throughout the entire series, their aging and showing of the effects of the radiation through like Jared's hair kind of falling out as he's running his hands through, or like, you know, the slow, subtle coughs of his partner, and like just capturing the essence too of that time period, like super cool. And on top of that, the scenes that they got of Chernobyl when it was abandoned, very reminiscent of actual like photographs or drone footage of the abandoned Chernobyl like site, town, and everything like that. So A+ for me on the visuals and the aesthetics here. So now that I talked it through, I guess I give this to Chernobyl.
You want to go, Dad?
Yeah, I'll be quick. The Expanse.
What'd you say?
The Expanse.
Okay.
Nick, what did you say?
I think
did you say? Yeah, I think he did too.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you went with The Expanse.
I don't know where I was going with my deposition.
He totally derailed his vote.
I'm so sorry.
I have to start over.
Sorry. You made points for both, and I thought you were done. I apologize. I'm so sorry.
I'll let Chad go, and then I'll be the tiebreaker.
Yeah, so for me, it's Chernobyl, and I really want to talk about just that first episode, dude. The aesthetics in that first episode, that is like one of the best horror episodes of a show that I've ever watched. It is phenomenal through and through, from just everything about it. They're bleeding like through their shirts. They're like sunburns or radiation burns or whatever the hell they got going on. Like the dude's holding the door and then he looks away and it's only on one side of his face. There's a lot in that first episode that is A, horrifying, and B, really cool. The Expanse aesthetically does feel like a sci-fi show. Like it feels like a lower budget made for television show at times, especially in that first season when it was a sci-fi show. Was it just the first season? Might have been more.
1 or 2, then canceled.
So for me, it's Chernobyl.
Cool. Yeah. So yeah, totally agree with like. I think the problem with The Expanse in the long haul is that while it does hit like some really aesthetic high points, the scope of what it tries to cover with its expansive world building. So while it wins on the world building, it stretched a little too thin to really nail a very solid aesthetic that even changes like season to season.
Yeah.
And while that could be a pro, I would give it a con against Chernobyl just because it's not consistent enough, and you can definitely tell like the budget increased, and because of that they were able to just do better things. Whereas like luckily for Chernobyl, like they are hyper focused on something and they just like wipe the floor with it. And so I give it to Chernobyl for aesthetic.
Oh snap! We got one category apiece, guys.
Oh. All right. Sorry, Dad. First loss of the night. Let's go with story on these two. So obviously Chernobyl, real life story. Great story, fantastic story to tell. Not one that I think has been exactly told in that detail, if at all. I can't think of any other like Chernobyl based shows.
Not like that. No, not telling the story. There's plenty of like zombie crap after the
because that happened.
Yeah, and it was like at E3 last year. There were like 4 games that took place in Chernobyl.
Oh, that's right.
Chernobyl something.
Or whatever. Did they ever come out?
I don't know, because the one was like a Ukrainian studio, so I don't know that they. Yeah, I don't know that they got their game out.
Yeah. Hopefully they moved.
Well, now we know why. Never mind.
Hopefully that's a Poland studio now. So story. Chernobyl has a fantastic story, and they do it very well. The Expanse, though, it also has a really good story. I think this is where the fact that it kind of strings all 5 seasons together in a somewhat total arc, but tells like very different stories each season, is super cool and unique to that show a little bit. Now, this one's tough. This one's definitely tough because they are not like on the same playing field, because they are doing 2 very different things with their direction. I'll let this one go around. We'll start with Chad.
For being the guy who never wants to be the tiebreaker.
You're setting yourself up.
Tiebreaker for this matchup.
Sounds hard.
Who wants to take a crack at it?
Too.
Chad, you want to go?
Yeah, I'll take a crack at it.
All right,
I think The Expanse does a lot good story-wise. I think that's where it stands high above most of the other sci-fi stuff that it's trying to maybe replicate or do better. I think the story stuff is where it stands. That, we already talked kind of about the world building. That stands really tall as well, but the aesthetics don't. But I think what it also does really good is a lot of the story stuff. That being said, Chernobyl gets my vote for being just a nice, tight, condensed story about something that actually happened, and actually making it interesting. It could have been very, very boring, if we're being honest. It could have been a pretty boring show, and they keep you on your toes for sure. So Chernobyl gets my vote.
I mean, that's the cool thing with shows like that. It's based on true events that happened, but they still keep your interest with the story that they're saying from the story that's already been told.
Yeah.
I gotta pick Expanse just because I love it. I mean, unbiased, of course. That's what I meant to say.
I unbiasedly love this.
I unbiasedly love it. I think The Expanse has massive story, lots of characters within those stories. Expanse. There you go.
For me,
don't get into too in depth, so Nick has to get in depth.
Right,
just tell your vote. Then his plan will backfire.
My vote is for Chernobyl. I think The Expanse story was great, and there's more. And I didn't say this in world building, but with world building and story, I think there's potential for more stories in this universe. And I agree with Chad that story and world building are the strong points. It matches exactly my notes. But what I like about Chernobyl is, again, exactly what Chad said. It's just they delivered so great at just the sheer catastrophic scale that this event really was in that area, obviously. And I think maybe I related a little more to Chernobyl just due to East Palestine and we're basically living in
recency bias.
In current day Northeast Ohio Chernobyl right now. So I've been like looking at the sink, whenever I
oh my gosh,
brush my beard or
you're just paranoid.
No, I'm just kidding. No, I give this to Chernobyl.
You mean true noble?
True, yeah, according to Joe. The comments are killing me, guys. Like, if they had to actually do with what we were talking about, I would throw them up on screen. But of course, Reddy and Joe are just killing it with hilarious jokes in the comments right now. They're so great. Nick, you gotta break the time, man. Oh yeah, did I say bonus point for The Expanse with at least the beginning seasons kind of playing out like different genres? You had like the first season, which was like a.
You didn't say that.
But we touched about this, last week a little bit, but it gets bonus points, but not enough bonus points to put it over Chernobyl. Nick,
sure.
Just to clarify, Nick, you don't have to break a tie. You have the ability to make a tie.
Yeah,
please make a tie
and then break it.
And then break it. Right.
Well, here's the thing. So I was really thinking like the first match here, we're have to run through every category. I think this one we're gonna have to run through every category.
You never know.
Because where I'm about to say The Expanse, I'm actually filtering that out all into another category. So pure play like story. I'll give the Chernobyl on story. Because I have to remember there's these other categories, and I think all the reasons I want to give it to The Expanse are not for the story. So Chernobyl, like Chad and Dad said, or sorry, Mike and Chad said, like it is just they did so well with a whole lot of kind of nothing. Because once again, that's kind of a black box of like no one really know what happened, and it could have been super boring. Like again, Discovery Channel, like this is what happened.
History Channel.
Yeah. Last thing before we move on to the next category, if you like a hyper-focused story based on true events told in an interesting and gripping way,
and bodies melting,
not the bodies melting part, but just saying, no. Watch Landscapers on HBO Max.
Oh man, I thought this was going to be another Chosen comment.
No,
that's what you were going.
I think it's 4 episodes, 3 to 5 episodes. I don't remember the exact total, but it's another mini series telling a true story. However, the presentation of that is a little more theatrical than Chernobyl. But again, short watch, great watch. If you like Chernobyl, you might like that show too.
Chernobyl,
check it out.
True noble.
All right, where are we going next, Nick?
We're going to characters here.
Okay.
And I am going to shed all of my my like
story
angst there,
into...
all my angst there for not giving The Expanse the story, because all of my story points are really character points, and I give it to The Expanse for characters because they're just awesome, right? So like nothing really to write home about in the characters in Chernobyl. Obviously Jared Harris is fantastic and what they're working with there, but once again, it's a very narrow time period and there's not a lot of character development per se, or arcs to have. That's just like the downside of that type of series. Whereas like The Expanse, those characters from like beginning to end, great arcs, fantastic characters. Like my favorite characters are not even the main characters in that show. And that goes like Drummer is my favorite character in that show. And
oh yeah, she's great.
She's like this weird side piece for like a long time. And then like she slowly comes into the fold in very
she's
sensible ways too. Right. It's not like they like shoehorn her in there because she's a popular character, like story wise.
Yeah, no,
it makes natural sense. Yeah. So, yeah, that's what I have to say there. Like The Expanse gets characters because they're all awesome.
Are you finished? I don't want to interrupt.
No, you're good. You're free to speak.
I give The Expanse this category as well. Characters are not the focal point of Chernobyl. Like it's telling the story of the event.
Unless a melting nuclear core is a character.
Right.
It could be.
And it tells about the horrific event and the gross mismanagement of said event. The characters, I mean, not really the point. The casting was great, though. I really enjoyed the casting. But with that said, the Expanse just wins because of what Nick said. You got more time. You have actual character development. You have a lot of really, really interesting side characters. And so the Expanse gets my vote as well.
I'm that guy. That's like the best line from like the whole series.
I'm that guy.
So I am also going to give it to the Expanse. I won't harp. It's literally the exact same reason you guys said. I think that Chernobyl has a lot of really good characters in it. It just doesn't have the length and the depth that the Expanse goes into on said characters. So yeah, it's an easy victory for the Expanse in my eyes.
And sadly, even if the series was longer, the characters would have died anyways.
Right, exactly.
Dad.
All right, Dad. We know what Chernobyl. Just have to say it.
Just say it. Just say it. You already won.
All over your face. We could see that big Chernobyl right across the forehead.
It is funny that this is the first category you're going to win where your opinion really doesn't matter what you're about to say right now. You can say whatever you want.
You know what, Chad? I'm going to come over there and beat you with that bandana.
Just because of that, Chernobyl.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is I was actually going to say Chernobyl just to be stupid and funny. But my real vote goes to the Expanse, obviously. You should have started with me.
Right. Well, hey,
I was going to make the joke to Mike where I was like, I thought Dad was going to go next, but we'll let Mike go next.
Yeah. You're going to go next this time, Dad, because it is going to come down to the last category. We have tied 2 categories apiece. Chernobyl taking story and aesthetic, and the Expanse taking characters and world building. So it all comes down to cultural impact.
Oh.
Do you want to start this off, Nick, or do you want me to start it off and go to Jeff? Because I think I can sum this category up very easily.
I'm going to start it off, and then I'm going to pass it to Dad.
Go ahead.
So, cultural impact. I think Chernobyl had a lot of impact on cultures, culture, but that's not what cultural impact is in this category, unfortunately. So Expanse kind of has to take cultural impact because as a sci-fi show, kind of what the Chosen's doing for that culture, like to me, the Expanse kind of did for the sci-fi culture, because it's like, here's this like beautiful little gem of like not a perfect show, but a really good show that is different and just does not fall on its face where a lot of other sci-fi shows like to fall on their face.
That's true.
So culture, it has like this weird cult following too, in terms of like a culture that follows it and like wants more of it. Like it's got a dedicated fan base there, and that's why it kept going, because for some reason, sci-fi was like, we can't do it, and then Amazon's like, you're dumb, like we're going to do it.
And they did it.
Yes, they did.
Because they're that streaming service, Anyways, right, terrible joke. Dad, come on, buddy.
Interesting. Hang on. Let's keep this interesting.
Okay.
Let me go next.
Oh, okay.
Let's build a little suspense here. Because
Dad make a point for the
he's going next. Okay, he's going next. But listen, we at least keep this.
Mike's going last. That's what's important.
Yeah.
I have a very hard time giving cultural impact to a show that was canceled. It's just the facts.
You.
I think that if you, and especially if you look at the average viewer rate, like it even went down when Amazon picked it up. So that might be saying something more, something about Amazon, not necessarily the show. But
both valid.
Chernobyl was a very, very hot show when it came out. So I'll give it to Chernobyl and then pass it to Dad. See, we're building suspense. Now we're tied. Like everybody's like, oh my gosh, who's going to get the knockout punch? Who knows? We know Dad's going to pick the Expanse.
I see
what's Mike going to pick?
Good job.
You're a douche.
You're not the first person to tell me that.
I mean, dang it. Cultural impact is huge in the Expanse. Obviously, there's so many people. There's different factions of groups of people.
Wait. Let me read the definition of this category. impact made with the audience, including memorability, impact on viewers, and the impact on the industry as a whole. So we're not talking about the cultures within the shows.
Okay.
But anyways, continue.
Ouch, man. You're having a rough time down there.
Dude, you just dropped the definition on your ass, man.
You didn't even like say his full sentence, and Mike's just like correcting you.
Whoa. Hang on.
It wasn't aimed at you, Jeff. It was just, this is the most ambiguous category.
I was gonna say it's so like, you know, I'm totally derailed.
Mike's good at that.
Now you're the douche.
Yeah.
I give it to Chernobyl.
That's
right.
Wow.
So I'd agree.
Chad and Dad, what did you give it to, Nick? The Expanse?
Yeah.
This is going to be so anticlimactic because of all the categories, this was the worst for both shows, in my opinion. Based off of the definition that I read, I don't think any show or either of these shows really does much to move either genre forward. Chernobyl is a fantastic show, but I don't think it does anything tremendously different or new or unique compared to like-minded shows. And The Expanse, I would say maybe the same. Maybe I move the needle a little more towards The Expanse because of, like Nick was saying, the cult following that it garnered.
Sci-fi accuracy, that was important.
Really,
for the show,
but is a cult following a sign that it didn't have a cultural impact?
Well, I'm trying to make a case for two shows that I don't think have cases. So I'm grasping at straws here.
Okay.
But I will say what The Expanse does, it's different because a lot of sci-fi shows that are successful, you know, you look at like Star Wars or Star Trek, this is not that type of sci-fi show. And then you have a show that was, I guess, could be debated as being a big hit or not, but definitely has a massive cult following, in like Firefly, show that I haven't seen, but visually I could see maybe these two shows could be similar, but just the Mass Effect route that The Expanse kind of took, I think did something unique for this style of show, whereas Chernobyl didn't do anything new or unique. It just like hit a grand slam with what it did, if that makes any sense. Like it did what's kind of already been done extremely, extremely well. It didn't like reinvent that genre. Kind of.
They did a hyper-focused period piece on a real life thing.
And it did it so good, like so well. But I don't know. I had this as a tie, but I'm gonna have to give it to The Expanse, and we have a tied category. What the heck? So do we go to the bonus music category?
Yeah.
I guess.
Right?
That's the purpose of the category.
Yeah, because cultural impact's like a moot point at this point. We're at a standstill.
Yeah. Jeff, music. Dad, start us off.
Oh, you want me to start?
I want you to start us off.
Are you?
You want me to read the definition real quick?
I'm so glad I stayed in the douchebag spotlight for a whole 30 seconds.
Can you use it in a sentence?
Idiots.
The Expanse.
The Expanse. Okay, I gotta have a reason. I mean, technically I don't, but
you don't need anything from me. You just need my vote.
That's true. That's true.
All right. Okay.
So, like, soundtrack is what you are talking about, right?
Yeah,
I just want to make sure I'm clear on the definition.
Right? General sound, music.
Let me pull it up real quick. Quality of music, both original score and use of existing songs, as well as its effectiveness when used.
Expanse.
Jordan. I'm listening to the Chernobyl soundtrack right now.
I don't get it.
Just a lot of crying. Yeah. Okay, so Dad gives it to The Expanse. Chad, I know you're such a huge lover of music. This is a very important category for you.
Yeah, you got to be honest.
Sound though. Can't we just call it sound?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sound design. Let's just throw it out there.
Sound.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know that either of these stick out in my mind. So what'd you say, Dad?
The Expanse.
Chernobyl.
Nick.
Suspense.
Wow.
Building the suspense.
There you go.
Oh my lordy.
Coming down to the last vote. Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. So if we just like, because I'm not sitting around here like, oh man, they had a great soft rock song in the opener on both these shows. So I'm gonna have to go more with like sound design. To make it a little bit more like compelling of a category, because totally these both have like really good sound designs. Because like Chernobyl, very good sound in it, very good sound design. Whether you like the screaming people like Mike does, he made his passion known for like the hospital room, very known.
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
this is why the Passion of the Christ does really good in movies. So yeah, and then even like Chad loves it for the firefighter sequence, right? Just like probably the sound design there was like really spot on for you in that aesthetic. And then you have The Expanse, which once again, the fact that they leaned into like the realistic or the realism of like the science fiction or the science behind it, right? Like they had really good use of lack of sound, right? And like creating that aesthetic of the like vacuum. And just like they did really good suspense sequences with little sounds at the right time, especially like when what's her face is like they're trying not to die from the wrenches and like the tools floating about. Just like really good. And then just like the ominous like openers of just like the ships with like the thruster sounds. Just
thruster
really
sound
good.
Very memorable. Love it.
Yeah, like you can hear them right now if you listen.
I hear it.
So yeah, I guess like sci-fi sound, so I'm gonna give it to The Expanse.
Oh gosh.
Oh no.
This is a good because I have Chernobyl.
Yeah, another
by a long
coming.
shot. It just captures that dread and suspense with your use of music so well. So my vote, sadly, is not sadly. I think well deserved for Chernobyl, but sadly we ended in a tie, so we have to bust out the poll.
Oh my god!
And the poll, we have 20 votes now, and it is tied. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
I turned voting off. I turned voting off at 9 o'clock to be sure nothing weird happened. We don't need any last minute.
Jordan, I vacuumed the floor earlier. The sound wasn't that appealing.
Oh Lord.
That's
we
fair.
don't need any last minute like votes trickling in, so I turned that voting machine off.
What do we got? The poll here.
By the way, Arcane won the poll in the last round. So nice. Chernobyl won the poll by 1 vote for this round.
Let's go, bro.
What a great day to be alive. Everything's going so good for me tonight.
Oh my goodness. I will be interested to see the total votes for the shows, like after we get through this round. Just
I can
see.
Do that.
That'd be interesting. Wow. What a contested matchup there.
Yeah, that was tight.
But it looks like we have ourselves a winner, and it is
our wild card.
The late edition Chernobyl.
Yeah.
Moving on to the final 4. All right. You know what? Let's give Dad some love here. We're gonna go into Division Dad's finals.
Totally not prepared.
That's love. Yeah, he's sad.
Sad dad.
Let's head into sad dad. Let's head into Dad's finals here, and why don't you kick us off, sir?
All right, I'm gonna kick us off. We have Severance versus Stranger Things. There, it's kicked off.
Hell of a kickoff, brother. You're doing great.
Thank you.
You're doing great.
Two amazing shows. they ticked a lot of boxes for me. A lot of these categories, actually. But I'm having a really, really difficult time. I love both of them for similar reasons. They're both multi-genre, so that's awesome. I don't even know where to start.
Pick a category.
All right, so let's start with story.
Okay.
So I love the stories for both. So the tough thing about it, like with the other one season shows, so Severance is only one season, and you wouldn't think there'd be a lot of material for a story, but there's so much packed into this season. It's ridiculous. Just the ride that it takes you on. I have notes. Why aren't these up? I'm sorry. I am prepared. I have my 10 pages of notes.
Yeah. And to clarify, unlike Chernobyl and I guess only Chernobyl so far, Severance is planned. There will be more seasons. It's just the first season came out last year, and they're in the middle of finishing up or filming whatever season 2.
Yes.
So yes, continue on.
Okay, so we've talked about this show a lot. You pretty much know what it's about. I love the steady, creeping sense of dread throughout the season. Yeah, there's just so much that happens. It's ridiculous. I love the mystery behind it. The Easter eggs. There's so many Easter eggs.
Talking about Stranger Things, right?
No, Severance.
If you think about both shows at the same time, like your points are like
yes. That's why it's difficult, because a lot of these are the same in some categories. Severance is like an onion. Like you peel one layer off, there's just more to it. And then it's not just peeling the layer, it's like they're throwing the layer in your face, in your eyeballs. Like
an onion,
burning your eyeballs, but in a good way. Someone else
is peeling it, yes, and chucking it at you very hard.
It's the season is a slow burn, but in a good way. Like it starts kind of slow, but then it just ramps up real fast, and all the stuff's happening. Sorry, I saw Joe's comment. So, and then Stranger Things. We've all seen Stranger Things. Has anybody seen Severance?
So I watched one episode because I'm a cheap ass and I don't have Apple, whatever they call it, Apple Plus or Apple TV Plus or whatever. And the first episode's free, so I was very happy. And there was no way I was going to be able to juggle 3 shows at the same time. I only got 5 and 5 on The Chosen and Arcane, and that was my focus. But
Ready coming in with a hot take here. Severance is like a TV show.
That's why Dad doesn't come on screen. He just gets
Jordan though coming in hot too with a very hot take. Guess I need to rewatch Severance because what the hell did I miss to even make this a contest?
Yeah, brother.
You're about to hear, bro.
I'm with you.
You're about to hear.
Yeah, brother.
But yeah.
Continue, Chad. Or were you done?
Oh, yeah. I was just answering your question.
Oh.
You asked if everybody saw Severance, and I said yes.
I take it Nick has not seen any Severance.
No Severance from me.
Do you want us to go around and compel you?
Yeah. You got to compel me on this one.
All right. So why don't Nick and Chad? Well, first, what did you think of the one episode that you saw?
So I actually really loved it, and it really feels like a Black Mirror episode in the opening. I don't know if that feeling continues, and I'm a massive Black Mirror fan. and it literally feels like they took an episode from that show and made it into its own show. I think I hate that main actor. I gotta be honest with you, I can't stand him. But I think he's really good in this. I think the interview scene where he's interviewing the new girl and she just chucks the phone at it or whatever at his head, I thought that cracked me up for whatever reason. But yeah, I loved it. I loved the first episode.
Awesome.
If I could find myself $6.99, maybe I'll get it.
Well, I don't think Ghosts or Sekiro is getting any re-release anytime soon. So
yeah,
maybe
might have time somewhere.
And funds. You don't have to save up for another copy of those games. Yeah. So Nick, why don't you talk a little bit about Stranger Things story, since you won't have much or anything really to say about Severance.
Yeah. So
cheers.
Hey, this matchup's starting off with a real bang.
I can't handle it.
Yeah. So the story of Stranger Things, I believe it to be pretty unique, if not pretty original. I don't know of any source material or anything quite like it. Obviously, there's elements of many things brought into it, right, to create a lot of nostalgia for people. But I think that's like one of the big things why people like really gravitate toward this show, on top of the 80s nostalgia, is the story and the characters and just like the general intrigue on like what's going on in this strange town in the 80s that probably everyone feels like maybe they were from. But 11's kind of like this breakout character. Obviously made a breakout star out of that actor. But 11 remains like the coolest character on the show for obvious reasons. And also a very interesting character. And I think each season they continue to make her character more dynamic, as they kind of like peel back her backstory. With the most recent season being like what I thought was like super cool, because they got into basically her actual origin in the lab, which was just fantastic. And that was like a mind trip on its own. That was like that was a movie. Like if you stripped out all the rest of the that season, like that was a movie of just 11 in the lab. So yeah, I think that was really good. Now, you guys have said very, very probably similar things can be said about Severance based on what you guys have described about it. It sounds pretty unique and pretty equally off the wall in terms of being abstract, right? Where you're talking about like literally go to work and there's your work self and then there's your not work self. So I could see some comparisons there. But just like longevity, like that's a tough thing for like Stranger Things, is like they've held it up for 3-4 seasons. How many seasons are there?
I think
4 with a final coming.
Yeah. And for something like that, not to, obviously it's waned a little. I think there's things that have waned in the story. Like they're just kind of a little bit too, they need to trim down the story effectively. Like they're just kind of like, for the novelty of it, all the characters have a storyline still where they probably could have lopped off some people this season. But I mean, I think that's what people have really liked about Stranger Things is, its story, and not that it's uncommon for people to gravitate toward that, but it's hard to hit like a mass appeal for the width of the audience that has just been like, I'm going to watch this show every season because I love it.
Yeah, I would say agree with a lot of the points for Stranger Things. I do love the use of D&D now that I'm playing D&D. I understand those now. And maybe Joe could correct me if I'm wrong, but like the creatures they face, like the Mind Flayer and Vecna, are all characters from D&D that have like manifested out of the Upside Down, which I think is a pretty cool little touch. But I think to Nick's point about I think some of the story, maybe the entire story, is kind of drawing out a little too long, and it's probably a good thing that we're wrapping up with this next season. because you don't want to. You never want to see a good show get into that territory of like Brett Favre territory, or like insert, super awesome athlete who just like stuck around like a year or two, like too long, and then the last thing you remember them as they retire is like, really, really sucky season with the Jets or the Vikings or whatever. And you're like, probably should have just went out on top. But that said, it's incredibly hard to describe the story of Severance without spoiling anything, really.
Yes.
And on top of that, it's just like there's a lot to unpack there. So even like in a conversation with Jeff, who's seen all of season 1, I would kind of struggle to like get out the story in a way that like would make sense to people who haven't seen it. With that being said, totally agree with you, Chad. It is very Black Mirror-ish. And the story is just, it's so cool because it really blurs the line of morality there with an interesting topic that may on the baseline seem like innocent enough, right? You're just making it so like your work life is your work life and your non-work life is your non-work life. But then as you see it play out in the story, you realize like, oh, wow, that's creating some very interesting morality problems potentially. I think it's written well. Like Jeff said, it is kind of a slow burn, but then when it picks up, like you're going like foot to the floor, like 100 miles an hour all of a sudden, which is great. And I think the story, that's as much as I can elaborate on, really. I give the story to Severance. What were you, Nick, I'm assuming obviously Stranger Things. Chad and Dad, I would need your votes.
Yeah. You want to go, Dad, or you want me to go?
You
go. I haven't broke a tie ever.
Okay.
I'd like to do this.
I'm gonna pick Severance, and Jordan's gonna murder me.
Come on, Chad.
Yeah, it's at least for me personally a no-brainer for Stranger Things. I don't get the vibe that we're overstretching our welcome on the show. I think it's gotten better as it's gone along. I think that they've made some missteps in the story here and there, but nothing that's overshadowed the story as a whole. I think Eleven's little revolt that she went on with the punks back in like season 2, that was a huge misstep. I didn't like it at all. But yeah, I mean, that being said, just everything that they're building story wise is just super compelling to me. Not that Severance isn't. I think Severance is very compelling as well. So mine is Stranger Things, which means we are tied on that category.
Indeed, we are. So where would you like to go next, Jeffrey?
Let's go to aesthetics.
Good choice.
Another category where they're just like both. There's so many things of these shows they do so well with just the way it looks, like Stranger Things, you've got all the 80s stuff happening, the 80s all the time. It's great.
80s all the time.
I mean, yeah, I totally lost my train of thought. So like the visual style is awesome, from the lighting. Yeah, it's good.
Stop looking at the comments.
I'm not looking at the comments. I'm trying to read through my notes. So like, yeah, it's got a good blend of nostalgia, horror, and science fiction. It's very, very immersive for the viewer to get sucked into that experience. It's great. Severance. I freaking love the aesthetic of Severance. Just like the severed floor by itself is amazing, and like they do such an amazing job with bland things and the use of colors.
So true. Yeah.
Like the highlighted color, like it's like a Matrix thing. Like you've got your blue pill, you've got your red pill. That's very much like the vibe I get from this show. Like now that I've dug a little deeper into this show and like the details and all the crap, all the Easter eggs, everything is important. Like they've put so much time in these details. It's outrageous. Not saying that Stranger Things didn't do that as well. They did it great too. But I'm circle back. Come back.
Not look at Chad's face. Chad is so perplexed.
I was just hyper focused on what you were saying.
I just keep thinking. I just keep switching like which show you're talking about in my brain as you're talking. I'm like,
yeah,
you're making a point for both. It's so tough.
For aesthetics, I have this as close, but I'm giving it to Stranger Things. It just absolutely destroys the visuals, the time period, the CGI of the creatures, their use of colors. While it's much different than Arcane, it still uses those bright colors and even the darkness to really prove its point in these scenes. But to Dad's point, the minimalistic approach of Severance makes this category kind of hard to judge, but also with that style, like it just nails the aesthetics. Like you guys are familiar with minimalistic art, right? Very minimal what's shown and how it's portrayed. And like the office design in the show is very much like that. It's super bland, lots of whites. The computers they use, while the show is kind of, I think, near future, the computers they use are like 90s, like 90. Like green screen, like super weird keyboards, but like visually that is super cool and like very intriguing because you're like, they have to be futuristic to like be doing this program they're doing, but they're using these computers that are like 50, 60 years old. Like what the heck's going on here? And the outside world, like I was saying, it does have that like slightly futuristic, maybe like a minor splash of like eerie dystopian future almost. It's just like what they do with the lack of like in your face visual stuff creates this like interesting tension in most scenes. And it like, helps whatever is happening on screen with just building that tension. Every episode it just builds and builds and builds, and it's really cool. I think their use of little is really commendable, but Stranger Things takes this.
Go ahead, Nick.
Stranger Things for sure takes this.
Yes, this is a clear victory for Stranger Things in my mind as well. I want to point out the final battle in season 3, which I think might be what Mike was talking about as far as the neon colors going on in the mall.
Oh,
so good, dude. So good. But there's a lot. I mean, the CGI, the horror elements that they play with a lot throughout the first couple seasons. There's a lot of really good aesthetic stuff in Stranger Things.
Well, like what they do in the most recent season with the use of the upside down and the clocks and like the Vecna's like portals and all that, like just really
I think that's where I'm getting hung up when you guys are saying that the story is like dragging on. Like I think the final season, the most recent season, was by far the best.
It
was, but there's kind of like a lull. No, I think could be argued for
like in season 3.
I think season 2. Yeah, I think season 2 was a little bit of a messed up, but that had because I think 3 was awesome.
3 was good. Yeah.
I think my point on season 4 in terms of story and its weakness is that it could have shaved like 1 or 2 character arcs off. That's the thing. It's staying too broad. It needs to narrow into a closing point to remain strong. Not that it's by any means weak. And the situation with aesthetic for Stranger Things is that this is the show's like undeniable second strongest category. Like probably nothing in the entire so far in the entire tournament can touch Stranger Things on this category and one other category we have yet to speak about. So that's why I would say it'd be hard to argue anything against Stranger Things for aesthetic.
Yeah,
because that's one of its hallmarks is like, oh, the show that's super dripped out in the 80s. Yeah, that one.
That's us.
Dripped out.
So I am that show.
We need to make a T-shirt that says dripped out.
Dripped out. Yeah,
that's Nick's Showboys shirt.
Yeah.
All right, Dad, we circled back.
Stranger Things. 100%.
100%. Why did we
just needed the convincing? Just needed the convincing.
I just needed to come back to my love of Stranger Things.
Right,
that's all.
right.
Yeah. That's all. I'm just now like coming off the high of Severance, so like I'm all about it. You know, it's all fresh. It's all Yeah, Stranger Things.
Jordan, I think we're all about to get sucked into a horrible excuse to make Severance win.
You shut your mouth, Jordan.
You're just starting a fire, bro. I think these votes are counted in Maricopa, Arizona. Just oh, Jordan. All right, what category are we heading into next?
Do it. Go to it. Come
3
on.
hours
Pick the
later,
right one.
100%.
Will you
do the right one?
Do the right one.
Oh. Which one did you want me to do?
No, it's fine. World
Characters?
building is good. No. I think I know what he's thinking about, but we'll see.
Same.
Music?
Yeah.
Nope.
Not music. Oh,
well, bonus category. This is for me. If we're going into music and sound design, this is a 6 out of 5 in favor of Stranger Things.
27 out of 5.
Yeah. But where are we going? World building. You said.
Yeah.
I'm joining the next episode is King Drip.
Do you want us to start or you want to start?
Yeah, go ahead. No, I'll start.
Okay.
I will pick Stranger Things off the top just because we don't even have to really talk about it because the world building's so strong with this show.
Yeah.
Strong.
You say Stranger Things?
Yes. Do I need to say more?
No, that's fine. Chad?
It's clear Stranger Things. I think that just the world that they built is just overly compelling, bro. It's very compelling with the kind of underground experimenting on kids and this upside down that they're trying to figure out. There's just a lot of really good stuff that they did world building. Mm-hmm. And I think it's awesome that it's all got like an 80s coat of paint on it as well. You know what I mean? I think that makes it even stronger. So yeah, it's Stranger Things for me.
Yeah, I would say this one I had close. Severance doesn't have the longevity to actually flesh out its world yet in one season. But I would say they add dashes towards the end of the season with some things that you learn about some characters and some places that it maybe could potentially build into a cool world. With that being said, Stranger Things has already built into a cool world. And there is like Chad, I know you kind of talked about I think it was in Chicago thing, but like 11's runway phase when she met up with the other numbers. Just the fact that she was in this child program with other kids who have powers, there's potential for more stories to tell in this world because more people like 11 do exist. And I'm sure there's many more D&D creatures and villains and bosses that could attack Hawkins or other locations in the United States or Russia. So with that being said, easy vote for me in Stranger Things.
Can we talk about like how amazing they went into the Upside Down when they showed Vecna going there for the first time?
Dude,
so freaking amazing.
So good. Yeah.
I love that season. Huh?
No, go ahead.
I just love how they went into a lot of like backstory in that season and showed a lot more history of what actually happened.
Yeah.
And it's cool because they did that, but they also pushed the story forward a lot too in season 4. They're able to accomplish both things at once, which is a great point in the story category. Nick, did you say your piece yet for world building?
No, but this is completely original comment, but they literally built a parallel upside down world. Next category.
Yeah, right.
Great point, Jordan.
And next.
Okay, where are we going next, sir? because right now
give it to Stranger Things.
It's no, because story was tied.
Oh my god!
And we have 2 in favor of Stranger Things. So
story's tied.
So need one more.
Story tied up. So Stranger Things needs to win one more to move on.
Come on, bro.
So we don't go to the poll until everything is tied.
Until everything.
Yeah. If we can't break a tie with our bonus category, then the poll comes up. And if we can't break the tie with the poll, which we can because it's 19 votes, then we don't have an even number of votes, so we can't have a tie in the poll.
The next category is
if we did get an even number of voters in the poll, we would go to the average overall rating, which basically is the seeding. Anyways,
Nick,
what?
Give me a hint.
Oh,
it's the last category in the main set of categories, not the bonus category.
Cultural impact.
Yes, sir. Okay.
Well, again,
come on.
Stranger Things.
Yep.
It's the strongest. It's the strongest category.
It's the strongest. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Without debate, without question. 100%.
Yeah.
Boom.
Just not to stretch this out, but like I think as Severance has more time to flesh its story out and stuff, and as more people join Apple TV Plus and find that $6.99 to shell out every month, when this show gets the exposure that I think it deserves, it may never, which is sad, but it could have a lot of cultural impact just in the fact that the way that people will think about such a weird topic like this. And maybe it does something like what Chad said, where it takes a very Black Mirror-esque topic or episode and like fully flesh it out into a show. That's not what they did here, but it could lead to something like that actually happening. And I just want to shout out Ben Stiller, who's the director of the series, which you would probably never guess because Ben Stiller's a goofball, but
he's directed most of the episodes.
He does such a fantastic job here. But yeah, Stranger Things, cultural phenomenon. Like, no, I don't think this is the strongest cultural impact show in the tournament, but it's probably number 2. It could really spar well with number 1. So we'll see if we get to that category. But yeah, so we have 3 categories for Stranger Things. So I guess Stranger Things going to be moving on. And as we prepare to move into our final matchup of the night in the Division Chad finals, I will say this was the second match that I had as being a tie for me. I gave characters over to Severance, and the world building was close enough to consider a tie, but you guys talked me into it, to leaning over to Stranger Things. And that leads us to the final, last but certainly not least matchup of the night of the Elite Eight, and this is the Division Chad finals.
Yes, finally we are here. And it always shocks me every time I see number 9, number 7. But yeah, we have The Mandalorian versus House of the Dragon. I would like to start with story.
Okay.
And I think that there's one show that does story very, very good, and then there's one show that does short stories very, very well. And The Mandalorian gives the short story vibe to me. There's a lot going on altogether, but it just feels like, and I've said this before, I love The Mandalorian, so this is going to sound like a negative rant against The Mandalorian. It does feel like a web series in certain elements, where there are shorter episodes. Some of them are like pretty much meaningless. So I think House of the Dragon, on the other hand, takes something that was kind of laid out in Game of Thrones, condenses it, and tells a tighter, closer knit story than Game of Thrones was telling. Now, in subsequent seasons, could we get a more fleshed out House of the Dragon? I'm sure we're going to as the war takes off. But House of the Dragon is my vote.
For story?
For story all day.
Oh, man. Oh, boy.
All right, who wants to step up to the plate next?
Mike, you got the most words to say next. Go.
I do. Okay. This category was a tie for me. Probably leaning towards House of the Dragon by a slim margin. I'm not, like I talked about this before, I think when we were talking about the Bad Batch, I'm not a huge fan of the like one-off style of seasons and storytelling that we get in some of these Star Wars shows like Clone Wars and Bad Batch and Mandalorian. I know some people really enjoy that. But I think sorry, I got distracted. The overarching story for Mandalorian is, I would say, mediocre. I mean, like it kind of, to me, like once you finish the Grogu quest, like then I'm kind of confused because that kind of seemed like a story that could really carry on, especially since they're still together. So I mean, I get why. I mean, it all makes sense and it's good, but I do think, though I dislike the one-off story style, I think some of the one-off story episodes are really, really good, and those one-off stories are executed in interesting stories. With that said, House of the Dragon, it adds a lot of context to stories that were hinted at in Game of Thrones, right? And when they talk about these characters and these events that happened, we now get to see those play out and get some more context in those characters and stories. My holdup for this is, to me, season 1 was slow in a lot of points. If you're not super into the what do you guys call it, palace intrigue?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not into the slow burn, of course we don't get as much action as we do in a lot of Game of Thrones seasons, but this is the first season of a show. With that said, I still think the story overall, the larger scope story of House of the Dragon, I think is more interesting than The Mandalorian. So I'd give it to House of the Dragon.
Dad, what say you?
House of the Dragon.
Okay. Nick, what say you?
I'm reading Jordan's comment, to which he says, meaningless was actually a plus for Mandalorian, especially for season 1. It was an amazing break from the major Star Wars timeline and major encounters. It got worse when they tried to tie it in for me. Naturally.
Oh no, we can't talk about Star Wars without Jordan. Holy crap.
That's what we're about to
open up a whole can of worms here.
Yeah. I definitely, he has a really good point there in terms of like it was a really good break for Disney and the whole franchise to be like, hey, let's have a hit that's not the Skywalker saga or the attempt to be a Skywalker saga. Let's like branch off, do something different, and arguably pretty different in terms of just making up a new character based on another popular character and kind of like running with it and weaving it into the stories they want to tell. But to the points that have been said in terms of, the one-offs, it's not super cohesive. Parts of it do feel thrown together. I do take a lot of issue with some of the choices they make along the way in terms of, it's a spaghetti Western, right? It's like, some of them are supposed to be short. They don't get good until they are like over 40 minutes long. All the ones that are like 20 minutes long, it's like a web series. It's like awesome Star Wars content, but like I'm not watching Star Wars for the story. I say that many times, all the time. Yeah. Meanwhile, House of the Dragon, obviously maybe a little biased because we did a companion series on it. Shout out. But
this is one of the rare matchups where we've done companion series for both.
Yeah, I was gonna say you did. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But House of the Dragon, like story wise, again, they went with something they did not have a perfect source material on. They had a history book about, and then they built these characters into that story. And the other thing in terms of story with House of the Dragon that really stands out is where the Mandalorian relies on Star Wars, right? For the story to connect to things. House of the Dragon, I almost separate it in my mind from like Game of Thrones. Like, you don't have to watch Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
you could, and
I
I
was
would, and
actually
I'm kind
just
of
gonna ask that.
debating. I'm kind of debating in terms of if I met someone that has seen neither and they want to start somewhere, I might suggest House of the Dragon for some reason. I'm kind of on the fence there. I haven't really thought that through, but like, it's not a no-brainer where I'm like, oh, you have to watch Game of Thrones first. I'm like, I don't know. Like, you might want to start with House of the Dragon. It stands on its own, and to do that, to break away from the first, right, is a huge feat in my mind. So I give House of the Dragon for the story.
Nice.
Why'd you give me such a for the story? What? when I gave it to House of the Dragon.
I think because I didn't want to think about it.
Oh.
I just didn't want to think about this match at all. That's like the thing.
Before you said that last point, Nick, I was going to ask, like, do either of these shows like work outside of the context of the larger franchise? But you kind of answered that question. So
yeah.
Moving on. Next category.
Let's move on to characters. Why not, right? I want to start with the.
I like your style. Just going right down the list.
Just going right down the list.
Style.
Let's just do it.
Yeah.
I want to start with the Mandalorian.
Okay.
I think that the Mandalorian has a decent amount of strong characters. The kind of hang up for me is that some of those strong characters are coming from a previous franchise in Ahsoka Tano, Bo-Katan, all of them. Moff Gideon, I think, is really strong. We do see Boba Fett. I mean, these are classic characters that are coming back. It literally took me an hour to find out that Cad Bane was in Boba Fett and not the Mandalorian. I totally misremember that in my head. I'm like, I don't remember that happening at all, because I remember him being with Cobb from Mandalorian. So it was like super tripping out. But I like what they did with I'm just gonna call him Mando because I can never remember his name, like Din something.
Din Djarin.
I like what they did with Mando. They took a pre-established looking character and kind of spun him a little differently. They still made him a bounty hunter, actually made him a Mandalorian this time versus Boba Fett just wearing his armor. Pedro Pascal, I mean, that dude is just in my heart for life, man. Like,
he's the Jared Harris of this series.
He is.
Oh no, because Game of Thrones, not House of Dragons. Whatever, close enough.
Oh yeah, true. Yeah. And then we do have to talk about Grogu. I think Grogu kind of captivated Star Wars and non-Star Wars fans alike, because he's just freaking adorable, man. Let's be honest. You can't shy away from it. That being said, I think that House of the Dragon has not only the strongest characters in this matchup, probably some of the strongest characters in the whole of the Game of Thrones universe, and there's some very strong characters. King Viserys, absolutely his Paddy Considine's performance through the whole of the series, from the young, healthy king to the deteriorating health all the way to the end.
I'm not rooting for Emmys for anyone in the Mandalorian, but like, that dude needs a couple Emmys.
He needs it. And then unfortunately he's backed up by like four or five other really strong performances from Matt Smith as Prince Daemon, which is, I mean, could go neck and neck with King Viserys as far as the character. I think Rhaenyra, both actresses, did a phenomenal job playing two different types of the characters, younger and older. Otto Hightower is a freaking phenomenal, like, Tywin feeling / Littlefinger vibe going on. And then Allison's got that. She reminds me a lot of Cersei. Thank you. She's got a very Cersei vibe to her. So there's a lot of strong characters. My vote, House of the Dragon. Sorry, I got a little long-winded on that one.
That's right. You're just channeling your inner Mike. So Chad went. Let's go with Dad. Chad Dad. It's a natural progression.
Both dads.
That's true, but not both Chads.
That's also true. Definitely not. So House of the Dragon.
Ooh.
All right, short and sweet.
Mikey, what say you?
Me. The thing that knocks House of the Dragon down in my mind, And this probably has more to do with story than the actual characters themselves, but I really did not vibe with the massive time jumps, which then, of course, led to age jumps naturally, because that's what happens when time moves. So does your age. I wish that they would have spent more time fleshing out the younger versions of these characters, because I think, to your point that you said across many episodes, I'm sure, is the younger actresses that play Rhaenyra and Alicent were really good, and it would have been cool to see more of how they went from those versions of those characters to the adult versions,
to their older versions.
They do change a lot.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I had that same feeling going into it, especially in that first half when we were getting those younger actresses, because I thought they were so freaking good. But I unfortunately think, especially Alicent's older actresses, freaking nailed the character. So I like totally forgot about young Alicent.
Yeah.
And I think Rhaenyra did a good job too. So,
and
maybe that was the point, to have their parts be short.
Yeah.
And my counter to my perhaps just your confusion and your point is that makes sense in the scope of maybe a normally executed series, right? But if you look at the long game of what this series is attempting to accomplish, I see it more as a very kind bonus for them to even show us the younger versions of them, because ultimately we need to get to the meat and potatoes that everyone wants to get to, and that's the war. So while I think in a normal series, like that's a little abrasive, but with what they're trying to do, that was a nice bonus for them to even do that for the audience, to even give them that context.
And that makes sense. Well, then I think maybe if that's the case, then it just falls down to execution, because I think you could accomplish the same thing in a less jarring way by the use of like flashbacks. You could have used all that material instead of doing crazy. I mean, flashbacks essentially are the same thing as time jumps, but I don't know. With that being said, I think the strong characters of Game of Thrones are incredibly strong, but once you get through, like, maybe, at least in my mind, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 characters, I think there's more of a fall off, whereas Mando benefits just from suckling the teat of the Star Wars franchise as a whole. Mando is a great, well, I wouldn't say great character. He's a good character, but it's super cool to see animated characters enter live action like Bo-Katan and Ahsoka. Are they essential characters to Din's story or a Mandalorian story? No, but also yes, because they pop. Well, Bo-Katan, yes, but like Ahsoka, I don't know, maybe. I mean, she pops in the show for a reason. There's going to be a story arc there. There was a short story arc. Throwing in for just fan kudos. You have a Luke Skywalker appearance. Wasn't a huge fan, but I mean, people loved it. You get cool characters like Fennec Shand. You have a awesome villain character in Moff Gideon. Even a character like Cara Dune I liked. Miggs Mayfield was really cool. The character Bill Burr played. Cobb Vanth was another cool little side character that popped up. And then you just can't deny Grogu, as much as I hate to admit that. Like, he took the world by storm, and I think just based off of that stuff, I gotta. I mean, Grogu's a character, though.
Yeah, but no one likes him for his character. They like him for his cultural impact and his aesthetic.
Yeah, aesthetic. Man, good point.
That's true. I mean, that's a touchy blend of categories there, but I have to give it to Mando based on those reasons. Which leaves Nick.
Nick, you're up, buddy.
Yeah, so I'll use a point that I made for Arcane, where this benefited Arcane. And this is where Star Wars does the opposite of Arcane. So Arcane did not write itself into corners with their characters, whereas Star Wars, they're notoriously famous for writing their characters into corners and establishing them, and then just kind of abruptly kind of undoing that with just random kind of empty choices that aren't really that important, but in the long run damage the characters. So Mando does a lot of this, and it's one of my major issues with the show. For a show I really love, and is wildly entertaining and a good thing to watch. But the Star Wars nerd in me, it's just like, they didn't need to do that, or like they could have really not done that or done that differently. That's a tough thing with it. Whereas characters in House of the Dragon are meticulously written, with with known beginnings and ends in them. Whereas the characters in Star Wars, there is no known beginning or end, and they kind of haphazardly are tossed about at times. So, I would probably dock all Star Wars on the character category. So I'll get House of the Dragon, because the bulk of the show is characters, especially season 1, where it's all character, palace intrigue, development. It doesn't lean heavy on action, doesn't lean heavy on a lot of other character or categories. It's all about the characters.
Fair.
All right. That's all votes, yeah?
Yep.
That is all the votes, sure.
Let's move on to one that I might need you guys to argue for me here.
Yeah, I already know it.
And it's right down the list. So we're going to go to aesthetics. I want to hear your arguments, because I'm completely dead in the middle on this.
It's a tie for me.
Tie, bro.
Yeah, I can't.
It's a total tie. Okay.
I can't
Nick,
choose.
Give me an argument one way or the other.
Out of the park.
Yeah. I'll give like some long-winded arguments, and watch it just end in a tie. But yeah, I just convinced myself it's a tie. I'm trying to think. Aesthetic, yeah, this one's definitely tricky, because Mando, much like how it found success in pivoting away from the typical Star Wars stuff, it also found its success in like refinding that Star Wars magic, that look and feel of like I'm sitting down, I'm watching a Star Wars show. So much so that you don't care that maybe the writing sucks, or some of the CGI is a little off, or there's merchandise tropes being thrown in all the time, like all the other Star Wars stuff. You don't care about that, because the aesthetic is just like, it's spot on. Like, it hit it. Like, and that's part of another category that's really tough to argue with. It is like it just landed so well. Same idea there, though. The aesthetic of House of the Dragon, the issue there is Game of Thrones had a very distinct aesthetic, and somehow House of the Dragon was able to both land that aesthetic in essence, but also be very unique on its own, right? It was able to really transport us back 200 years in the same world. So while adding polish, making things kind of like the High Republic, right? Like a more prosperous time where there is no war, things were actually like not ruins. It did a lot aesthetically. But I think some of its most jarring moments were breaking in the aesthetic, right? Whether it was like the dragons not being 100% all the time, the use of newer technology not quite capturing that Game of Thrones essence all of the time. Classic Game of Thrones has a kind of obviously lower budget feel, but it's also part of the magic because it's all about characters, right? And really personal, especially in that first season. Like, it's so personal in Game of Thrones, and some of that gets a little lost in them trying to execute this first season. So aesthetic wise, I'll let Mando take the cake on this one.
Dad, talk to me.
This one's real tough too. I love the way House of the Dragon looks. Just, it's a gorgeous world. I love dragons, so like, yeah, sure, like maybe not perfectly done, but they still look so freaking cool.
Yeah.
Who doesn't love an awesome dragon, right?
Right.
I'd probably pick House of the Dragon. Like, it's just aesthetically, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Mike, unbreak your tie for me, brother.
I mean, they both like crushed this category. I will. The one thing that gets me every time is using practical effects whenever necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of my favorite things about Star Wars. And they carried over that tradition in Mandalorian with using like costumes for the alien creatures and races that they were actually able to use practical effects. They did.
The main character.
Yeah. Grogu. Like, it's also one of the things that I absolutely detested about The Hobbit coming off of the back of Lord of the Rings. Like,
yeah,
it's 98% CGI, and Lord of the Rings, like they had the Uruk-hai like costume people running around. Like that's so cool. Whenever you can execute something visually with something practical, you get a bonus point for me. The ship CGI is so awesome. But House of the Dragon, like, does everything so great. The only dock of points for House of Dragon is the dragons early on in the season,
right?
Were a little weird. I don't know. Do you have a vote yet?
I have a vote, but I'm waiting for yours.
I guess based off of my love for practical effects and Mando actually using them when as much as possible, I'd probably lean towards Mando.
So we talked a lot about this on the companion series where I was just not vibing with the aesthetics originally on House of the Dragon. But as it kind of festered in my brain, I think I kind of give it a bonus point for that because it could have easily came in and looked exactly like Game of Thrones. Everything could have looked exactly the same, used the same exact thing. I think the using of the what's it called, Nick? The 3D sound stage thing.
The volume.
I think it gives them the ability to make some of the locations look a little bit more haunting and a little bit more cinematic, if you will.
Like the finale. Yeah.
Yeah, the finale. And I'm talking specifically like when they're on the bridge at whatever bridge that is, Dragonstone. Just that shot of the dragon in the background. There's a lot that, like, as I thought about it, I was like, I really, really like what they did with the aesthetics on the show. I thought the dragons got better throughout the show. I thought they looked a little weird. I still think Damon's dragon just does not move correctly. They need to fix that. He's not going to take off if he moves like that, but that's just like a small gripe. I
do love the like massive dragon. That was
like,
Vagar, dude, ladies.
So cool. Yeah, so cool.
Here, let's see if Jordan's comment sways your opinion here. What about those guys wearing the awesome dragon outfits? I don't think it's doing anything for us, Jordan.
And on the same side, like, Mando does a lot of really good stuff too.
It puts you there, dude.
This was by far the hardest category, I think, out of this matchup.
This is my hardest category. And yeah, man. House of the Dragon.
And we got a tie. 2 votes apiece. So House of the Dragon still needs to win one more category.
Yep.
Will it do it?
Let's go to world building next, I guess. I was going to do cultural impact, but let's do world building next. I think this is kind of close in my head too, because these are 2 shows that already kind of had their world established. But where I think the separate comes is with one of the shows making that original piece of media feel very different from what they came out with. But Mandalorian is world building wise, there's a lot that I like with the bounty hunters, what they're doing with the bounty hunters, what they did with Luke Skywalker, what he's got going on. There's a lot of good world building stuff that I think adds a lot to Star Wars from the Mandalorian. However, I think what the other show does the best is it takes, and I already kind of touched on it, it takes a pre-established world and makes it feel radically different by changing it and building around it. So whether it's seeing the Red Keep for the first time in House of the Dragon, where it feels radically different from its counterpart in Game of Thrones, it's lively, it's popping, it's peacetime, things are going on. And even the kind of world building they do within the show later on when the High Towers take over and the Red Keep becomes like a freaking dungeon. Like it's dark, it's dreary, there's people hanging from the ceilings and shit. So I have to give this one to the House of the Dragon.
I'll go next.
Nick? Okay, go ahead.
I'll go next. Yeah, so I think so with Star Wars, there's a problem it inherently has in that it is lusciously designed to allow for infinite amounts of world building in any capacity. Anything adds to this world.
Mm-hmm.
Like I could write something on the internet right now and add to that world.
Yeah.
There's people who make fan things on YouTube, like,
and some of them are really good. Yeah, some of them are really good.
Add to the world. So it's by no stretch of the imagination easy to add to the Star Wars world, and you don't even have to do it well. You can do it terribly, because technically they've kept the holiday special alive.
Yeah,
things. So there to me, there's no real special sauce to add into the Star Wars world to build it. Whereas House of the Dragon proved that this world could be expanded upon in a very good way and done right. Because it's like Game of Thrones, this huge expansive series, right? That's just infinitely deep and has so much source material. And they're like, can we make another show that somehow expands upon this and like does it well and like brings you back into that world, but a different part of that world? Yes. Like somehow they did pull that off. And they did it well. And I don't think anyone can just like easily do that. It's not an approachable subject. It's very much behind a special lock and key to correctly build this world. So to me, it goes to House of the Dragon as well. Mando has no special sauce in the equation of Star Wars. Its special sauce lies in different categories.
Yeah, I agree. Dad, what say you?
House of the Dragon.
Okay.
Keeping it short and sweet.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the world building stuff, like for the Mandalorian, is just all stuff that's already been built. They're just expanding upon it. Not that you can't say that about House of the Dragon, but I don't know. It's just the whole first season is world building of House of the Dragon. That's what we're doing. That's where we're building out this Targaryen world. So,
right.
Not that I needed to argue anymore because I think we already have a winner. I don't know why I'm even talking.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah, this one was another extremely close one. But I like what Jordan said here. Not that it really changes much, but he advised, be careful with this one, established worlds. But who contributed to these worlds, the history of these worlds the most? Which is good because that's an easy thing to lose in the discussion of like, I mean, because obviously these are two very rich in lore franchises, right? But yeah, it does come down to what added to that existing world the most. And like Mando takes you to some new locations, but I mean, like Nick said, I guess what special sauce does it add?
It's nothing like the Bad Batch can't do. It's nothing that
like
any other show can do.
It's just like, oh, here's a potential planet that we might have another story on someday.
Yeah.
It's there. Whereas, yeah, House of the Dragon does add a lot of context. I think that's the key to a lot of the categories for House of the Dragon, is context. Adds more context to things we were told and hinted at in Game of Thrones. So yeah, regardless, it doesn't even matter what my opinion would be because this gets 3 votes, and that's 3 categories. So we have House of the Dragon moving forward. Woo! I will say
that's nuts. That's crazy.
Cultural impact. Again,
Mando wipes the floor.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is number 1 in the entire tournament for cultural impact. Stranger Things like kind of sniffs the heels of Mandalorian, but I mean you can't argue against the cultural impact of Mandalorian.
Yeah, I mean, just as my final piece for like, I wish Mando would have gone forward because, I don't know, aesthetic. To me, that's the issue. Is Mando is hyper strong in aesthetic and cultural impact for me. Unfortunately, 2 categories. We're not weighting the categories, so
yeah.
That's very true. It's very true. So we have the final 4 is set. We have our matches here, and
I'm worried.
Let me tell you, it's going to be spicy. So we have facing off on the west side of the bracket here, Arcane taking on Chernobyl, a battle of number 1 seeds. And on the east side of the bracket, we have House of the Dragon taking on Stranger Things. 2, they both share the sad state of being criminally underrated in their seatings. I think, what is House of the Dragon, like 9 or something, and Stranger Things was 11?
11, yeah. Ironically.
Wow, that is kind of ironic. Jordan just throws us in here. Tiebreaker, which show had the most incest? I guess that would compete a lot with the cultural impact of Mandalorian in the other way. But yeah, so the Elite Four or the Elite Four, Pokemon on the brain. Sorry, guys. The Final Four is set, and let's just we'll just tease the rules here because the Final Four and the championship are going to look a little different. We're actually going to be doing these matches in a debate against our opponent instead of the full panel deliberating. We're going to go head to head, very B Hero Fight style. Shout out to an old podcast, some podcasting friends. They had a really fun idea for a podcast of debating each other on various topics. But here are the rules for the Final Four. We're
going to do the same thing, but take 10 hours to get to it.
Yeah, exactly. So each match will be. This is not. This is the wrong graphic. Well, I'm gonna fire myself. It's
literally had a producer to fix your graphics.
Yeah, exactly. Here we go. The rule set is up. Final Four series will be represented by the corresponding panel member in a debate. So I will be facing off against Nick, and Chad will be facing off against Dad. Each panel member will get 1 5-minute round to state its case for their show. 1 2-minute round for a rebuttal will go to their opponent. And then 1 minute for their closing argument. So each person will get a chance to state their case. Each person will get a chance to rebut the other's case. And then each person will have their final chance to throw out their closing arguments. The other panel members will decide the winner. If a winner cannot be decided, because of course we have 2 people and that is an even number, so there's always a chance for a tie. The live audience will factor in as the tiebreaker, so we need you guys here with us live in case you need to vote and break ties for us. The winners of the Final Four will face off in the championship in the following week using the same exact rule set we're going with here. And of course, we're going to try to remove our bias as much as possible and analyze these series objectively. And again, the most important rule of this entire tournament is you should subscribe to Showboys Podcast and Showboys Gaming on YouTube. But yeah, I guess Nick,
I want to have
he's
fun.
Right. We should have fun. But subscribing is definitely
no fun.
I'm having a blast.
No fun.
I'm coming for Dad's throat next week. I'm shooting him with some dragon fire.
I'm scared. Okay.
He's got. Oh man,
I
have a question about the. So, let's say Dad's arguing for his show. Does he have to vote for his show?
No, you guys will argue, and me and Nick will decide the winner. And if we can't decide, the audience will
we're not
chime
voting
in.
on either. Gotcha.
So we're fighting each other.
Yeah, and then when Nick and I debate each other, you two will decide the winner. So yeah, looking forward to it. It's gonna be fun. Oh geez, I don't even want to. Just call me and I'll break the tie in the most biased way possible.
Sure.
I mean, hey, if you want to come, you have experience, particularly with B hero fights, so you can come in and be a guest
bias
judge.
Boy fights.
Bias boy. Yeah, exactly. You can come on and be a judge on the panel. That'd be fun. But yeah, make sure you guys tune in next week. Do you guys have any closing remarks for tonight's episode before we jump out of here?
I'm shocked.
Shocked?
I'm not. This actually went exactly how I thought it was going to go.
Wow. I didn't think about it, so I had no expectations because I couldn't think about it. It wouldn't.
I mean, if I'm being honest, I was like 50-50 on the Chosen and Arcane just because that show was just like riding my coattails this entire tournament. So I thought for sure it was getting to the Final Four, but
we didn't. We didn't talk about the poll results for House of Dragon versus Mando and Severance versus Stranger Things.
We did not.
Yeah, so I'll recap the polls. Arcane won by 1 vote.
Okay.
Chernobyl won by 1 vote. Mandalorian won by 1 vote.
Wow.
And Stranger Things
had to be a landslide.
14 votes and 5 got to Severance.
Yeah.
So that pesky
Stranger Things beat it up down there.
Yeah.
What were you saying before we went into the polls? You thought The Expanse?
I thought The Expanse was going to go forward.
Honestly, I kind of was leaning that way too, but the more we started talking,
I was trying to push it forward. You guys weren't listening to me.
To be fair, you were trying very hard. You voted for The Expanse.
I pretty much gave up after that. So
yeah,
it like derailed everything that I had going on.
Yeah, I think this played out as I thought, with the exception of the Chernobyl Expanse. House of the Dragon and Mando is probably, for me, out of the 4 of us, the closest or hardest to decide.
Yeah,
I knew it was going to be House of the Dragon. I just knew it.
Yeah, no, I figured it would go that way, but I had the hardest time trying
to decide.
What was our hardest? Our hardest was Chernobyl and The Expanse, right?
We had to go all the way. Yeah. That went down to
6 categories and the poll.
That went to one person voting in favor of Chernobyl.
Yeah,
right.
So whoever you are, you should feel proud. Your vote mattered. The Stranger Things Severance, I thought it would play out that way. But I think as more eyes get on Severance, you need to look out for that show. That's the sleeper of the tournament.
It's seriously so good. Like probably one of my favorite first seasons of the show.
Yeah. So with that being said, make sure you guys subscribe, tune in next week, and we'll have a poll out for the Final 4 matches soon. Join the Discord, check out our website, showboysmedia.com, and we'll see you next week.
Peace out.
I got to be honest. I was not expecting to make it back to my seat after my usual post-show bathroom break.
Yeah. Do you have a bathroom down there?
It's
around that corner.
Yeah, about approximately 2 feet away from where I'm sitting right now. So right around the corner.
I use a catheter.
That's a great tip there.